Ministers and central bank governors of G20 nations are gathering here in Washington for a series of meetings this week. It marks the first gathering of the G20 since Russia's war on Ukraine began. Janet Yellen, the US Treasury Secretary, says she will boycott several meetings if Russian officials participate in them. But she says she will attend the opening session to show support for the Ukrainian finance minister, who will be flying into the US from Kyiv. After the opening speeches, Yellen says she will skip other sessions over Russia's presence. Both the US and Europe will face the unwelcome prospect of Russian Finance Minister Anton Sulyanov participating virtually. He was hit with US sanctions earlier this year. The meetings are emerging as a big test for how the world's leading international bodies will respond to Russia's aggression against Ukraine. Many participating countries have condemned Russia, but some of the most influential members have not, including China and India. Several other wealthy nations, including much of Europe, of course, depend heavily on Russian energy, and the upcoming meetings will highlight how deeply entangled Russia's economy now is with the rest of the world, and how a series of Western sanctions are impacting the Russian economy. Our correspondent Susan Tehrani joins us now live from the streets of New York. Susan, it's good to see you. This decision by Janet Yellen to boycott some of these sessions of the G20 meeting here in Washington, very principled, of course, on the part of the US Treasury Secretary, but doesn't it dilute the impact that the United States can have on the outcomes of those meetings?
Right, Simon, some suggest that this is a missed opportunity on the part of the United States to express its concerns directly to Russia during these meetings, and that Janet Yellen should indeed remain in the room and confront Russia directly. And it's an opportunity for Washington to challenge Kremlin's war efforts. However, others say that these people are not professional communicators, and this is not the proper setting to do that. But, you know, also this dilemma over participation really opens up the broader conversation and question over how the United States can really sway G20 member states at a time when the economic atmosphere is so competitive around the world, as you mentioned earlier, and the long-term issues of how to manage the global economy ultimately with so many powerful and diverse actors. Whether or not one country can, for example, boycott a session, it will have the effect that it wants, or whether or not, these entanglements really will play a greater role or not.
Susan, just within the next few minutes, President Biden is going to be participating in a virtual meeting with many of his allies and partners internationally over the crisis in Ukraine. It comes within hours of the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky saying that the Russians have begun a fresh onslaught focused on Donbass, that eastern region that, of course, features the cities of Donetsk and Luhansk. And all of this is coming at a point where President Biden is now under pressure from at least one prominent Democrat on Capitol Hill to do more to deepen America's engagement in the Ukraine conflict.
You know, in recent weeks, there has been growing concern that among media pundits and even some media outlets here in the United States, we've been echoing and hearing the call for sending boots on the ground to Ukraine. It started on different networks. There was an outcry really by among many when a news commentator said that we should send boots on the ground. I'm here. This is what should happen. And then, we heard from Democrat Chris Coons saying that on CBS recently. Adam Kissinger, he's a Republican. He echoed that call of sending boots on the ground to Ukraine. These are words that are being thrown around. But on the other hand, there was just this report yesterday that Malcolm Nance, who's an MSNBC contributor, he appeared on MSNBC in Ukraine. We found found out that an MSNBC analyst just joined Ukrainian forces for their fight against Russia. And many are calling this very dangerous, considering the fact that, calling for boots on the ground on the part of the United States is a policy that the Americans have so far decided not to take. And it's something that doesn't have an appetite among the American public because, first of all, it's not a rally around the flag issue. America is not directly involved in this conflict. And second of all, it would really change the dynamic of the war. Two nuclear powers getting involved with each other on the one hand, and then America being part of NATO on the other. An attack on one would be an attack on the other. NATO would essentially be involved in the conflict. So it's a little curious to understand as to why these comments are being made to send American troops into Ukraine at this point to fight against Russia, and how there isn't sort of some kind of oversight or hearing when members of the different parties are making these comments publicly, or whether or not it's sort of some kind of preparation on the part of the administration to prepare the American public for an announcement on the part of the Biden administration, which both scenarios seem to be concerning nonetheless.
Well, of course, words have consequences. And when President Biden called what's taking place in Ukraine an act of genocide by Russia, it is perhaps not surprising that there are some figures within his own party who are saying, in that case, the United States ought to be doing something about it. Susan Tehrani, WION's correspondent, live for us today in New York City. Thanks as ever, Susan.